I'm going to address a complicated, disingenuous situation. It's expected of me, for some reason, to be able to simplify a complicated and disingenuous situation that was visited upon me as a form of physical brutality, combined with an intellectual cluster bomb. And while this is grossly unfair and insatiable, I'm dealing with the criminally insane. There is a recent pile-on in the integrity circuits that I have valued my entire life, being the Kennedy vision. So, for example, the city of Pittsburgh, and well, it's sort of hard to include the crummy situation in the city of Seattle because they were just aware that Pittsburgh had gotten away with brutal lying and were so insensitive and psychotic that they were getting off on terrorizing a victim of torture. But Pittsburgh simplified the whole thing by saying if I was worthy of being helped, I would have been helped. Well, the truth is clearly inadmissible. They've impardonably destroyed evidence, lied, and refused to amend their precepts when grossly proven fraudulent. For example, an impacted neuroplasm causing involuntary spasms is not rapid eye movement detection of date rape. It's a maniacal plastic manipulation of the brain to sell a drama from Hollywood in which a person was rendered a golem. But that's just one example. When I say it's a complex, disingenuous situation, that's the fact that that's lost in the maelstrom of lies told by the British Empire about me and to me. It's just one example. But we're talking about the city of Pittsburgh's claim, which was backed up by Liverpool people. People like Cynthia Lennon and Julian Lennon were weighing in that if I deserved help, I would have received it. And since I'm saying that's not true, okay, that's not true. It becomes a less simple situation. It becomes supposedly incumbent upon me to disprove their theorem because they say it's only common sense. Any hillbilly would know that the person who doesn't get help is the person who doesn't deserve it. Take, for example, the person who was raped by King Crimson, the hillbillies in Deliverance. Did he get help? Well, the hillbillies know everything, right? They were the ones doing the raping. So obviously Pittsburgh is being a name and Liverpool is backing them up. But I'm just trying to show you the direction and velocity of their criminal insanity. It's not a provincial norm in the city of Pittsburgh to just sit and watch when a gigantic, armed, deadly, pornographic corporation raids the school and drags off one of the students for torture and mutilation as an investment in what they claim is a peace plan. Or maybe it is a provincial norm because the whole province seems to have been enlisted in doing it. It doesn't really play as a person who would have gotten help if he deserved it. I was struck blindside. I was not a sexually active kid at that time. I was just attacked blindside. They knocked out my... Okay, that's the story of what they did. I've gone into it tons of times. It's in my writing. I mean, it's in the evidence. It's grossly deceitful to deny it or say it's not true or to say I deserve it. But it's also a standard, at the University of Washington where they fabricate tripwires so that they can poison you some more and stuff and say that you deserve it because your heart isn't bleeding for people who are the same boat as you are. Well, the truth is that if you go back in time, it's true that I'm no longer committing myself to helping people like Catholic Worker because of their crimes. They're terrifying crimes. I won't reward something that evil. But if you go back to the time I was 8 or 9 years old, okay, I wanted to cooperate. I was a very obedient child. I was very obedient. I was not coached into free will. I was coached into subordinating myself to authority by my authoritarian mother. So what I was missing from public schools, aside from safety factors, when I was transplanted to North Carolina, if you didn't have to cry in the office biting your fingernails bloody and then discover nobody would do anything when you disappeared for a month, to kidnapping by armed adult Manson family types. In North Carolina, if you missed a class, they called home, find out if you were okay, and tell the parents that you missed the class. They were concerned. They followed up on you. Okay, so whatever strange creation of morality has come out of Pittsburgh and the Polyzania of Liverpool. It's not consistent from state to state in America. But the point is that when I was in North Carolina, by the way, I was writing about ecology. I was writing about musical sensibilities. I was admiring the beaver and the creek. I was concerned about the environmental destruction when they tore out the creek to make way in a floodplain for a mall or something. The bulldozer still registers in my mind that when I went back to visit, sitting there in that beautiful creek where that beaver used to be. Well, the point is that if I had gone into school when 9 or 10 years old and they said, we need to teach you kids about ecology, this was before I was battered, before I was blind and I was glaucoma. I've just been treated with lasers and deafened. My senses were shot brutally. I was gassed, given neurological problems. Instead of treating, Seattle poked me in the injuries, like the Bush family doing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, pushing the bag that the hostages in, and they called themselves the administration of Seattle. They kept poking me in the injuries, trying to detonate that thing in your face. They called it neurological implant, which they extruded. They got Jaime Carbonell's extrusion, leaky chops, from the very people that did it, who played an hot wire overdub of soundtrack from the pornographic industry. And poor Jimmy Curry, he takes a solemn vow on poor John Barleycorn. Well, these people took a solemn piss on little Jimmy Curry. And then they extruded it, and gave it to Jaime at Sound Mental Health to belabor about the implants. Oh, he's immoral because he's been implanted by the Wattenmakers. He's immoral because he's been implanted. This is what they said. This was real. This is reality. This is Jay Inslee's America. This is a fact. But at 9 or 10 years old, I was a few years before that happened. It happened when I was like 12. 13, 14 years old was the range of 11 to 14 when they poisoned and tortured me. It was grueling, man. So it was meant to smother my free will, make me a robot that they could drag around like a golem. Okay, if I had gone to school with clear senses and been enticed to believe that the poetry I loved, I used to memorize the Raven. In third grade, I can still recite quite a bit of the Raven from third grade, when I was 9 years old, before Brucker set on me. And by the way, I cooperated in getting the things he was stolen taken back to school. I mean, if somebody, but the person I reported it to, then I said I was going to be killed and disappeared, and they didn't even look for me. So that's Pittsburgh. Okay, but if they had said, we want to teach you to recognize different types of trees, we want to teach you about birds and bees and the difference between wasps and yellow jackets and why they're needed for pollination. And we'll go out to the zoo and talk about the animals, and we'll go out to the hills around, maybe see where the Amish live, take a field trip to see where the Amish live and more in synchrony with nature, and discuss the way that the forests are being ravaged by timber and coal is being exploited and senselessly overused, and why the mindset of guerrilla warfare and hatred and military industrial complex and nuclear testing, underground nuclear testing is so much more important than solar energy, that we vote for Reagan over Jimmy Carter. I mean, I'm trying to say something that's intelligent and it's getting garbled in what really happened. You understand what you're hearing? If somebody would have nurtured me as an educational student, and I was one of the people who had my hand out I gave a speech in favor of Shirley Chisholm. That, in fact, is when Ruth Hammer appeared to really glower at me and say, that's it. But I was one of the people who was going on the marches and who loved black people. They say, oh, you're genetically racist. It's false. The first person I saw was Nathan. I loved him. He gave me a sour look the second time I saw him. Okay, so it's a false and lunatic idea. Racism is eugenic. Okay, that's the reality. But you see, the pattern is they just dump. They're like Colucci said about his father when they're filling up a cement layer. They just throw anything in to take up space. And that's what Pittsburgh and Seattle do. They just throw anything. Liverpool just says, well, throw this in. They can't admit any kind of form of evidence. Penis Gabriel has to realize that rapid eye movement from a neuroplasm isn't date rape, but we think it's funny that he got Jimmy Carter. Oh. And so throw in fears of COVID-19, throw in that he liked women who had pretty hooters. He throw in that whose cap he's wearing today and interrogate that issue. Throw in the fact that he spends money at the pinball joint. Throw in that he refuses to promise to feed the poor before finding a place for assisted care for himself. Throw in the fact that he's 62 and people die in their 50s. Throw in the fact that UW claims that he put clay in his prick and in his ear and made him deaf. And then get back to reality, which is if he deserved help, somebody would have helped him. If he deserved help, somebody would have helped him. And what the Kennedy machine wants to do is to say, well, show that your program of politics is a better program of politics. Well, I think it's really stupid to depend on a 62-year-old man who's deaf with glaucoma and has been tortured. And really wants to try to look after himself in old age with Parkinson's disease, which was inflicted on him, and the unbelievable insanity by which he was poached, try to keep himself calm from the supraventricular tachycardia panic attacks that come with even reflecting on what happened. But if you insist, I have books about climate change, which are intact and in sequence largely, which could be taught in seminars or used as a basis for some degree of teacher retraining. I have the complete history of Leonard Houdini, the discovery of Bly Cinders, and the origin of the maniacal, fanatical, hidden hand of hybrid warfare that came out of Access Hollywood with the Beatles' terrifying backstab. And I have the grueling remnants of what I was put through because of these murderers robbing museums, saying they're going to poach this kid to make Yoko Ono happy because they like John Lennon better. Well, the truth about if you like John Lennon so much, you'll be pleased to know that he pulled a Houdini. And they sacrificed me on behalf of the person who helped him write the script of his Houdini. And that's nobody's propaganda. You can see it for yourself. They never did anything to Gail Burstyn. They're constantly threatening to bring her to my fucking door. You know, it's a hardwired holy war monkey business. A hardwired holy war monkey business. Now, if you go to calm yourselves down and look around you, you see the world is in trouble. We need to cancel some of our foolishness. We need to look at, for example, what Jimmy Carter's doing with the Carter Center and make it clear how this can influence our priority structures. You need to look at what John Kerry and Al Gore recommend for coping with climate change in the United Nations. We need to look at what the United Nations recommends and integrate them into teacher retraining for curriculum development. You see, I know what curriculum development is because I have a book over here called Humanizing the School, which is about public education. Now, I know people don't like humanizing anymore. They don't like humanism. That's liberal. That's been given a bad name. But I'm talking about, that's my father's book. They murdered him, okay? And they call themselves the Green Party. Okay, I don't want to get into the politics. It's too monstrous. The word is curriculum I'm talking about. Adaptive curriculum reform. That's how we got Black history into schools. Black children could learn pride due to curriculum reform. We want to reform the curriculum for echo schools to teach about how to bring about progress, use what we've learned about technology to represent ourselves as clean, technological human beings in search of equity in the community. So, and they say, oh, he looks at porno. That means he's going to squeeze girls. Girls came on to me for 20 years as part of Pitt's super secret army program. I do not go out looking for girls. Do not. I dated Jeannie for 6 years, and we never even kissed or held hands. She was my best friend. I know what it is to have a woman for a best friend. I don't look for Rosa stuff. I wouldn't date any of these people, no matter how pretty they were. They're psychotic. They stalk you before they try to seduce you. They're just weirdos. But the truth is that no matter what, I'm not looking for that. And it's not because I buy into the celibacy formula of the people who are saying we justify the AIDS attack. We will inject you if you date somebody. That's certainly there, and if a girl came on to me, I would explain carefully to her, do not endanger yourself, me, my loved ones, or anyone else with your stupidity. These people are killers. They're criminally insane. But that's not why. The reason is because girls don't come on to me. I'm not out looking for girls. I don't believe the storyline that I was just hunting a virgin. I didn't know the girl that they tomatoed me with was a virgin. So it's a lie. But it comes down to, we think that's funny. So we're going to throw in anything in the works. And Peter Gabriel wants to say that neuroplasm causes seizures is proof of date rape. We're going to back him up so we can castrate queer ball and give him Parkinson's disease. And this is the mindset that presents itself as an alternative to curriculum reform, which instead of saying the CIA should be allowed to drill into people's heads and make them neuroobedient, so they can be used in cruel and unusual experiments while the police wink and the Justice Department says, ha 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 ha, and the rock stars say, we'll do it again. Instead of that, we teach about ecology and ask Congress to take a look at the hybrid war station that the Axis has put in Hollywood for a backstab. And I have established that this is what happened, okay? And when Liverpool says, no, that's much too complicated, it's much simpler, what really happened is that if he deserved help, it would have come.